Hey everyone, this is video number 1 of our pen and ink series. I am trusting that if you're watching this, you have actually shaded some of the pencil studies. We did pencil studies before we did this of our 3 major shapes. So if not, make sure you've done that because it'll get you ready for doing it in pen and ink. This is going to be value charts, and value is the light and dark of something. So value charts are charts that explain or show us values that go from the lightest light to the darkest dark. Okay, so here are some things to think about with the pen. You don't need to press it really hard, because it's pretty hard to make a very light mark. Here I'm barely touching the paper. Here I'm touching the paper with a normal pressure. There's not a big difference between these. So don't push really hard. It'll kind of mess up the sponge on here. So that's number 1 different than a pencil or a charcoal, where our pressure, how hard we push, really affects how dark we make a line. So that's one thing. Another thing is you can't go back and erase. So if I'm making something really dark and I need to lighten it up, I can't go back and lighten this up. So it's really good to start out lighter than you think by not putting too much ink on something and then going back and making it darker with multiple layers. And I should have probably started by saying this. We are only using our thin tip Sharpie. That's it. So no ballpoint pens. You just don't get as good of effect. No pencils. Don't trace it out in pencil first. Just grab a thin tipped marker, and we are going to start with our first technique. So let's make a little chart here. It's going to be our little value chart, and we're going to split this up into 7 squares. Rectangles. This first rectangle I'm going to make pretty small because we're not going to put any ink on this. The book calls this a 0 number shade. I labeled it a number 1 shade. And then we're going to put 6 more boxes in here. And I'm not worried if they're the same size. I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. My 7 is pretty big. Maybe I'll even try to make an 8 even darker. I don't know if I'll go that far. And we are going to start out with hatching method. Okay, so hatching is just a series of repeated lines. They can go vertical. They can go horizontal, they can go diagonal, and sometimes you even see hatching where they're curved. Well, you see that a lot. Sometimes there's even hatching with wavy lines, but it's just this repetitive line. The lines are following the same direction. How you make something look light or dark when you're hatching, and I'll do a little mini here, little mini chart, is when you want something dark, you put your lines close together with not a lot of space. When you are trying to make it lighter, you put more space between your hatches, and it appears lighter. Okay, we're going to start ours a little opposite than that one. We're going to leave the number 1 blank. I know the book doesn't show it that way, but that's the way I was taught. The book will have 0 there. I'm going to leave that the number 1 blank. That'll be our lightest light. And then we're going to come in here and we're just going to do a horizontal hatch. And it's just going to look like a couple lines inside a rectangle. I'm going to put a lot of space between them. Maybe I'll put one more down there. I'm not really worried about my lines being super straight. That's not what this is about. It's really about making value. So here I want to get a little darker. So I don't want to get too dark yet. So I'm not putting my lines close together at all. But I am putting more lines than here. And sure, it doesn't look super shaded or value yet, but give it a second. We'll get there. Let's move to the next one. You're probably pretty much getting this. I'm going to put, I don't want to go too dark because it's better to come back and make my darks. Even if I have to darken it up because I can't erase it. And I have 3 more squares to fill up. So on number 4, ooh, they're kind of close together with 2 more squares, but that's okay. All of this is studies. We're just studying. We're practicing. We're studying. Remember Holtzinger's saying, you can't worry about making art perfect, ever, but especially when you're just learning. You have to be willing to make bad art to make good art. So don't worry if it doesn't look like mine, or you have to do it a couple times to really get it. That's okay. Here is, you can see, now you can start to see how it's starting to look a little bit from lighter to darker as we go. And I think I'm going to actually split this here and get an 1/8 right here, which was really nice because that'll give us 7 boxes of a shaded, a hatch shade. So here I'm going to put, you can see at the bottom of this I started, it's even looking a little bit darker here than here. Maybe some of you can see that, maybe some of you can't. Now these two are looking pretty similar. They're looking pretty the same. So before I go to that next one, I'm going to come in and put a couple more hatch marks in, or I might go over and thicken up some of the ones that I have. There, that's looking now pretty, see that jump happening. In fact, it makes me want to do it on all of them. But I'm going to go ahead and put this darkest one in, so I'm going to make my lines. I still want space between them, but I'm going to make them much closer together. And then come over and I might go twice on that. I wouldn't even probably have to go twice on all of it just to darken some of that up. Now we're going to look at it. Okay, I see a nice jump here. It goes darker, a little lighter, a little lighter. Man, my 5 and 6. There is a difference. There is a difference, but it doesn't quite. I think here I could separate these 2 more. Now remember what I'm always saying, that we're building up our sensitivity to be able to recognize value. It's something that doesn't come natural, so every time you work with this, you're going to see it better, see value better. So I can't lighten number 5, I can only darken number 6. And what's going to happen is I'm going to go over this again. Maybe I put some lines in the center, or maybe I go over the lines that I already have there, giving them a little bit thicker line. Of course, the thicker line looks darker. But now I have to go and adjust this one, and then I'm going to have to adjust this one. That's what happens when you darken up one value, then you have to adjust the other values, right? But that's helping us see. So now I see here, here, that's getting darker. And I think if I go over this one more time, I don't want to color it in solid, that's boring. I want some kind of texture going in there. That looks nice. Like now I can see this, that's a nice step from here to here to here to here. That's a nice step. And so I'm just going to leave that for now. A couple other little things you could do. You can make short, if I wanted to make like one side of this darker, I could just put little short hashes in with my long hashes. hatches, hash marks. And you can see here how this side's getting darker than this side just by putting little short hatches in there. And of course it kind of messed my value scale up a little bit, but it's good practice just to be able to see how going over something with shorter hash marks versus longer hash marks gives us that feeling of going around, getting darker on one side. You can even do it around this little one. Okay, so that's hatching. Let's do another one. This is called cross hatching, and in class I combined these two together, but in this video, because we have a little bit more time, I'm going to make separate value scales. So again, hatching, we're going to start with our hatch. So it's a little bit redundant, but it gives you a chance to practice. Let's go ahead and do it all over again. We're going to put in our 2s. Ooh, I'm already getting much closer together. I'm going to put some more space in there. So I didn't want it that close together, so I put some more space. That's our 3s. Oh God, I start out really close together. There's our 4s. I'm going kind of fast on this. We've done it once. But we have a few more layers that we're going to, it takes a little longer to build up the cross hatching. Six. Seven. I guess I'm going to do 8 on all of them, huh? That's good. I'm an overachiever. And this one I'm just going back over it one more time. Okay, so it's not quite as dramatic up here because I haven't worked it as much, but still a nice gradation. Okay, so cross hatching. The difference is we cross back over going a different direction. Hatching is all the same direction, right? So when you hatch, your marks move the same direction, all of them. A cross hatching, we're going to lay down going this way, but when we come back for a second layer, we change the direction of our hatch mark. And you just, the different directions, you change the directions. So even on this one, if I wanted to make one side of this darker, there's a diagonal, space it out. You can see how now it's, getting shaded on one side. So let's do that here. Let's start at our light. This is going to look like a grid. I'm going to put a couple in there, here, a little bit closer together. Number 4. Okay, it's getting a little bit darker as it goes. Darker even. 5 and 6 are going to be pretty close right now, so I'm going to go over that, I think, twice. There, I got a nice darker going from 5 to 6. These two are a lot alike, aren't they? I'm just going to do it now. Okay, I darkened that one, but I'm going to go over the 6 one more time. Not everywhere, just a little bit. And then make these close together here. And 6 and 7 are pretty close. That's okay. And then 8, that's going to be really dark. You might just have 7 squares on yours. That's okay. Okay, that 8 looks pretty dark. But we're not going to stop there. Now we're going to hit it up with a diagonal. So we're going to come back to the light. Ooh, I can't go that close. I still want to keep about the same space apart on this lighter value. You can see I started really close up there in the corner, but let's keep this pretty consistent here with the space between. So I'm just kind of looking at that space, and I'm going to try to make something similar, but I'm not spending a ton of time trying to make it perfect. That's not what this is about. We're getting used to the pen, and we are training our brain and our eye to see different values by making different marks. So light, it's getting there. Got a diagonal going there. I'm going to go over that a couple times, or look where I have some spaces in between. Hit that up. Now look at all these. They're kind of running together. We'll see if I can get 6 or 3 different steps out of this. I don't know. That last one might have to be pretty black. So really nice jump from here to here. I like that one. Number 7's actually lighter now. So I'm going to get in here and really make those together. Man, I think that's going to be tough to get 3 values going in there with this dark. Meaning I just have so much ink. I think it's really going to have to be like almost a solid colored in shade to make this last one any darker than the 7. But you can see I'm keeping all the hash marks going the same direction each layer. Okay, let's do it another time, maybe our last time. We might have to tweak it a little bit, and let's go the opposite diagonal. Okay, there's that. I'm going to make these closer together. Playing around with that. It might look messy to you, but when we see this used in drawing, why am I going over this again? Oh my gosh, it's challenging. It'll make more sense when we're doing it and actually shading something. It doesn't look as messy as it might on a value scale. That'll make more sense the more you do this. So, man, those look pretty close together. So maybe I'm going to come and this is now, maybe I'm going to go back to the vertical ones, because you don't have to, now that we have the different shapes, maybe I put just, there's a horizontal, there's a little vertical, but man, I'm going to get dark really quick doing all that. I put a lot of ink on it. But it's good to see, okay, wait, go back to the diagonal. It's good to see that, you know, you can't lighten it. You can only darken it. It's a one-way street. So, you know, to compare these going, now these two, I got light, a little bit lighter. Definitely getting, I mean, a little bit darker, getting darker. Here, man, those are really close together. So, especially on the edge where they meet, I'm going to come in here and maybe there's some horizontals. There's a little vertical. Do another diamond or diagonal. And I really made mine too dark. And this is the video, and I've already started it a couple times, so I am not going to start it again. It'll just be a good lesson to show you to not go too dark, because then my 7th and 8th, man, my 7th and 8th are just basically black, all the way colored in. You can see I'm changing those directions because every time you change a direction on a crosshatch, it makes it look darker. So these are just going to be one dark little solid blob down there. And I did, at least I pulled it out. I got it really going from light to dark. My 7 and 8 really blend into one shade, but that is okay. And I don't have, this is one that I did in class, where I didn't get dark so quick. And here you can see, you know, leaving more light as I went. It has a kind of a better breakdown. Pretty close. Not pretty close to the same. Okay, so that is your cross hatching. Okay, we're going to do 2 more. Maybe 3 for a bonus. So make another one. Or one shade's tiny. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Should I just go for an 8? Try to challenge myself? I pulled it off there. I missed it there because I got too dark. I'll challenge myself with it. Okay, this is called the scribble method. And don't underestimate a scribble, people. They are awesome. So what kind of scribbling am I talking about? And it's good to practice your scribbles, I kind of make an irregular scribble like this. Right? So if I want to make a scribble light, I put a lot of space around it. And when I'm starting to make a more medium tone, I close it in a little bit. I call tightening the scribble. When I'm going to make something dark, I really tighten that scribble and bring it closer together. Now, the mind is going to have a tendency to make the same shape over and over again. We don't think that, but it will. It'll want to follow the same kind of, in the same areas. So a lot of times you have to push yourself and say, okay, where haven't I put my pin through? Here, here. I'm going to take my scribble and kind of put it through those areas I haven't done and try to change the spaces, the white space of the paper left in between. I do see some people using a scribble method like this. That would drive me crazy. Plus, it ends up looking a lot like a hatch mark, because if you have to do it like this and then you darken it, I don't know, it just has mud. It's okay if you like that style more, you can do it like that. I prefer this kind of loose organic scribble. I like this kind of furry texture it gives. Really quick, I will just show you these examples so it gives it some relevant, some value. Here's a scribble eye. Now, I think I said this in another video. I know I've said it in class. They make different thicknesses of pins. We're working with just one pin thickness. At Five Below, they have a great set for $5. I think there's 5 or 6 pins. Some pins write really thin like this. This would be the kind of pin we're using now, a medium thickness pin, and then a thicker pin, but not as thick as a thick Sharpie. Those are like super thick for pen and ink. So if you like pen and ink, I would really suggest going to Five Below and getting some of those pin sets. Now, you go to an art store, and they're going to charge you $20 for 5 pins, and the ink might last a little bit longer, but I would start at Five Below because it lasts a long time. I was pretty pleased with it. And I just wanted to show you that there was one more scribble face in here. If you weren't in class when I showed that video, I should just keep going because everybody's waiting for me. Oh, here we go. How cool is that? A portrait done just completely in scribble. and they started out with a lighter pen, moved to a medium pen, and then some thicker pen on the outside. But just, I mean, it's creepy looking. I mean, they're staring at us in a creepy way, but the scribble even adds to that. Okay, so let's hit this. Our 1 we keep blank. Our number 2 is our next to light one, so I probably already put too much. I don't want to put very much in there. I can always come and add it more because I can't erase it. Number 2, I'm trying to barely touch this pen to the paper. It's hard with a marker. There's number 2, but there's definitely, and you know how I say the brain wants to make the same shapes. Look at that. Look at what my brain did. I mean, they're not exact, but they're very similar the way I'm moving that pen around. So try, you know, if you catch yourself always making the same pattern with your scribble, just be aware of it and see if you can switch it up a little bit. There's the next darkest value. I want to take it all the way to the edge. I'm changing kind of the direction. There, it's pretty close to the 4. Hard to tell the difference apart. So I'm going to push it, go over it a little more. I'm not tightening the spaces, making the scribble close together, but more just going over it more, darkening that. I'm going to do the same for 6. The scribble method is my favorite. I like the textures, I like the energy, and I like that it's fast. If you haven't figured me out yet, my brain moves fast. I like my pen to move fast too, and this is one that I just really gravitate towards a lot. I really liked the way the 5 and the 6 played together. Let's see, I think I'm going to be able to get all the shades pretty easy, but I shouldn't get cocky yet. Here I'm going to tighten up my scribble, making more scribble and covering it up, just tightening my loop-de-loops, bringing it in. Takes a little bit more, but I got a nice gradation happening here. And then on this last one, I'm going kind of fast because I know I'm going to have to layer up the scribbles. So I'm really going in there, trying to get into places I haven't. Now I'm going to tell you a little trick. Show you a little trick. Okay. Da, da, da. I don't really even need to mess with that. I mean, it looks pretty good. Now, I do want to say, most of the time you will see artists using multiple different techniques together in one drawing. So you'll have hatching and cross hatching used together. This is hatching, going all one direction. And then where the face is getting more shaded, going in and doing cross hatching. We got some scribble here in his goatee, his beard. Some scribble happening in his eyes, right up here in his eyes, brows. And then there's some stippling around his nose, but we haven't talked about that. So here, let's say on this 8, what I'm going to do is just kind of go over it with a little bit of cross hatching. I'm going to put a couple of lines like this. You can't see that I'm doing that, but it's going to change the value. So if you don't believe it, rewind it and just look at how much solid and darker this is now. Yes, it's still a scribble. I can put that scribble right back over it. It maintains that texture, but just using some cross hatching with it. I'm doing this real light because I don't want it to get super dark. It'll really, it accentuates, accentuates it. It helps you control the value. And so you'll have artists using cross-hatching or stippling with a lot of different textures that they do. Okay, so one more one of the major ways to do pen and ink. I'm just showing you the major ones right now, and that is called stippling. For stippling takes a while. It's a much slower process, so we are going to make our rectangle smaller so we don't have to fill in as much. This is our 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Oh, I think I made a lot there. 2, 3, 4, 6. No, I was right. It's just so tiny it looked different. Okay, so I should go over there and get that alarm. Stippling, let me pause this really quick. I'll be right back. Stippling are just dots. Now don't slam a marker down. I mean, if you had a pencil and you were stippling, you could go like that and it's not going to hurt that graphite, but it will rip up a marker. You don't have to hit harder. Remember, it doesn't make a better mark if you hit harder. So stippling is dots. The more dots you put together, the darker it's going to be. Most of the time, stippling is done with random dots, meaning that I'm just filling them in, not really making a pattern. Sometimes you will see stippling. Well, this isn't really making a pattern, it's just showing dark to light, but you can see that, you know, even the difference in how dark you make your dot will show. Sometimes you'll see stippling down here where artists will make a pattern out of their stippling. Sometimes that works. Most of the time I think it's distracting, but I have seen it work like in certain areas, you know, where you want more form or you want kind of a pattern to show up, maybe on an animal print or something. This is even a pattern, even though it's moving a little bit, you can see it's really gridded out. Here they're starting to curve it a little bit on this one. This is the kind of stippling I'm going to do. And while I have this page, you can see the different kind of scribbling. They all have a different feel to it. This is weaving, cross-hatching, hatching. Okay. So let's start out. We keep the 1 blank and the 2. I am just putting a few dots. Very careful not to overdo it. Okay. Is that going to focus? Sweet. 3. Got them already putting. Again, the brain will want to always, it's weird. It'll want to go in the same places, so you kind of have to force yourself filling in the blanks. 4. One thing if you want it to look really nice is practice making a real dot and not this. This is a lazy stippling. Now that can be a beautiful texture. Sometimes that's cool, but for stippling you really want to try to just get that dot and release it. Okay. I'm going to speed it up a little bit. You can see I'm already going over some of the same places. You can see I kind of circle. I'm circling my stippling kind of with my, kind of helps me fill it in a little better, but you'll find your way. And look how, it's so funny how just places where I touched that twice, or touched the same dot twice, how much power it has, how much darker it looks, like areas here and here. But then I didn't touch it there. I'm telling you, it takes some concentration. This is what I mean by turning. Sometimes if I'm not trying to make a circle, but it just helps me not make lines, not make a pattern. You'll find your own way. Man, I'm getting really dark really quick on this. That's my 6. We'll see if I can pull it off. I might have to do Oh, come on, baby. Stop. Shut up. Shut up. Now I'm stippling and not looking at it. That's never good. Stop. So, a lot of times stippling is done with other things. There's our 8. A pure stippling drawing, or 7, our pure stippling drawing will take a long time. Ask my advanced art students from last year. But God, they're nice drawings. And the first couple days, I mean, I'd hear all the students, oh, I hate this. Oh my God, I don't like this. This is terrible. But 98% of those students, by the end of it, there were a couple that never caught on. They never liked it. They didn't like it from the get-go. But most of them ended up loving their stipple drawing. But already I can feel a certain, my hand hurts in a different way. It doesn't hurt, but you know what I mean. You can feel the tension. And that is pretty cool. That turned out not bad. Not bad at all. I really don't need to mess with it much. I don't, I could bring it to the edges. I see I kept kind of away from the edges there. But the more I darken it, the more I'll have to come back and darken this. So I think that looks pretty good for stippling. Not bad, not bad, not bad. And then in class, I had you guys do a creative wheel or graph with the makeup a mark yourself. The one I did was just a spiral. I'm not going to put an 8th one on there because this is just for you to look and to come up with a mark. Some people did X's. Some people did wavy lines. You could do, you could pick and make a wavy line. You just would put more space to make it darker, less space. I mean, you know what I mean, lighter to darker. You could do little X's, you could do check marks. I think I'm going to stick with the spiral. And I've seen little spirals, a bunch of little spirals, but I'm going to do it just with one big spiral. It's a little quicker. We'll get to this next video. So here I'm going to make my spiral with a lot of space. Here I'm going to make it with less space. I'm going to have to come in and add to my spiral, of course. Meaning I'm going to have to go over it more than once. I'm going to wait until I get to these darker ones. Here I'm tightening up that spiral. I can see it's getting darker, but here the 4 and 5 look pretty close, so I'm going to come back and do it again. It's going to go right over the top. I'm not trying to make it inside of another one, or I'm just playing around. This is experimental. So this one I'll start darker, getting it more closer together. Now these two look a lot alike. What if I did the spiral go in the opposite direction? Yeah, that darkened it up. Nice. Go in the opposite direction. And for this one, I just have a feeling I'm going to be going over it a lot. There's that there. And I like that, but I'm going to try to make it darker. What if I start on the outside and go in? I haven't done that yet. We got it. Maybe even go back out again. And there's just a creative way to make a value chart. So, look. This is very important. If you need to practice it here where it's flat, it's in a line, because next we are going to take these same textures and we are going to do them in shapes like this. So that's why it's so important to get it here first. Practice that. Make sure you have at least 7 different shades on each one of these. And, you know, you can't do this enough. That's a wonderful practice. A quick way to do this, though, once you do the steps, if you want to keep practicing, is don't put the rectangles down. See if you can get 7 shades just starting from just a natural fade. Usually when I do a natural fade, I'll start kind of dark. You know how we started with our lights to darks? A lot of times, I mean, you could start with lights to darks, but when I'm just trying to naturally do it without a box, little boxes to separate it, it's easier for me to start with the dark and then to lighten it up as I go. So that would be a value scale happening without separating it. It's easier to separate in the beginning. And even here, if I really wanted 6 different shades or 7 different shades, I'd probably have to work back in, darken that right up here, and really try to get more of some middle tones. And there, it's a little better. Keep this light here. It's nice. Same with hatching. I use a lot of hatching in my work. If you look at that elephant painting up close, the tigers, there's a lot of hatching. Getting that to go lighter. Remember, I can come in here and do half hatches. Anyway, I gotta stop this and get to the next video. But before I do, let me just put some cross hatches in here. Going too fast for you? That's okay. For me it's kind of nice, because I've done this for so much in my life, is to see how fast I can go. You don't have to. Okay, this is the end of number 1. Have fun with your value scales, guys.